Hello, my name is Joshua Keith, and this is theburningcoal.com, a website dedicated to God's glory, His grace, and our response to it. Today we're going to talk about being thankful for quenching. And if you remember, we looked at the idea of hungering and thirsting for righteousness last week. We saw what Jesus said in Matthew 5 verse 6. It says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied." And so we talked about how righteousness is not something to ignore. Instead, it's something we should try to obtain and not just put a little bit of effort, but it should be as important as the most fundamental actions that we take to keep ourselves alive. But here's the good news. You'll notice, let's use the Olympics as an example, although you could actually view this through the lens of a lot of different worldly pursuits. But think about the Olympics. Think about how many people just breathe and eat and drink their sport for year after year after year so that they can get on an Olympic team, so that they could qualify for the Olympics. Now, there's quite a few people who get into the Olympics, but there's a lot of people who wanted to get into the Olympics and then couldn't. And then after that, you have people who were trying to get into the Olympics. They got into the Olympics, but they're not just trying to get into the Olympics. They're trying to get the gold medal at the Olympics. But there can only be one. And so these people spend their lives dedicated to one singular focus. And they come up short. Luckily for us, we know that if we make righteousness our one singular purpose, we will not come up short. And it's important for us to think about what God has done for us and how we can be thankful for this thirst being quenched. One of the things that we see is that we are transformed. After we become Christians, God took us from this person who was poor in spirit, who had failed and fallen short and needed to be saved. Someone who was mourning their sin and had no power to change the situation. God took us from that situation and He said, I am going to transform you. I'm going to remove the sin that stained your life. And now you can be righteous. In fact, I am making you righteous. But He doesn't just do it in such a way where He says, okay, well, I've made you righteous. Now go ahead and keep doing the things that were sins to begin with. Go ahead and do the things that made you unholy that you were already doing. But instead, you need to be this new person. And He's going to help us do that. He gives us His word so that way we are trained up in the way to become holy. That's what we see in Titus chapter 2, verses 11 and 12. That the grace of God has appeared, all men, training us how to live upright or righteous, godly lives in the present age. God trains us with His grace, with His word, so that way we can have the righteousness that we need. And ultimately, He is going to give us victory over sin. Again, we don't have to have this desperate hunger thinking, oh man, I want it so bad, but I will never be able to get it. It's not because of our own power, but because of what God has done for us and what God is doing through us that we can and will be victorious. And so we are not going to be saddened by the fact that we turned our lives over to God, that we decided that righteousness really is that important. If we will follow God that much, if we will seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, then we will find that which we seek. And for that, we can truly be thankful. I hope this lesson blesses you in your walk in His kingdom.